Hey guys, welcome back to Boysan's Place. Let's talk story. I was messaging with Pat, one of the fellow authors on my Facebook page this morning, and I was um, compelled to do this podcast early in the morning. Actually, I get up pretty early. I'm an early riser. Um, and really, for me, as I don't know, I guess I'll just speak as an individual. I can't speak as a writer or as a creator, but my favorite time to create is early in the morning between 1 a.m. Or 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Those are the best times for me where I found I've been most creative. I've been able to focus a lot on my, whether it's writing or it's music or whatever it is, it's really worked for me. And so the reason I did this was because, after receiving several messages from people who wanted to know more about my writing, um, I figured I'd do this to help others as well. I mean, I can learn from everybody else. I've been to writers' workshops, and I'm talking about big name writers out there. I know that a lot of you work hard at your craft, and sometimes you feel like you're going nowhere, and so it's kind of nice to reach out to someone. And in this industry, in the entertainment industry and the writing industry and the music industry, it's difficult to trust people because you get a lot of sharks out there. And and a lot of you writers know that, like me, you guys probably receive a lot of messages from marketers who try to, help you boost your sales. Just be very, very keen and know that a lot of them are just sharks, so just be careful with that. Trust your instinct, but also be very, very careful. Um, So some of the things that people ask questions are like, what genres do you write in? And, for me, as a kid, I never wanted to pigeonhole myself into one style of writing. I just feel like writing can be so creative. I mean, you can expand yourself even more when you try to and you test the water in different genres. And for me, I got my start probably around 9 years old, fourth grade, when one of my teachers was challenging us to write a diary, to keep a diary. And I hated writing as a kid. You know, um, my parents used to read with me and my siblings, and that was fun. But then when it came to writing, I just didn't want to write. And so it was an assignment that we had to do. So we had to write just in the diary every day, whatever went on in our lives. Could be a sentence, could be, a paragraph, whatever it is. And for me, that became like an escape. It was a challenging time in my life, in my family, where if you read the book Heather, you'll know what I'm talking about. It was my escape to write. And it was like going into another world of just creating this whole different world, and I know that others have done that as well too, you know. But with that, you can sharpen your skills even just by writing every day. When you have writer's block, just take a break from writing at all, listen to music or something, do something else that's creative, or do something different, do something like athletic sports, go for a walk, and don't create, and then maybe an hour later, 2 hours later, you'll probably get your creative juices back again. That's helped me. And I know that's helped a lot of other writers as well out there. um but yeah, as far as genres go, going back to that, I tested the waters about 14 years ago, and I had just have this collection of haiku poems, and I decided to put out a book, just self-published, on Amazon at the time, and it did pretty well. I was pretty shocked. Then when I saw one of the Harvard bookstores carrying it, I was like, no way. Um, and then I did Plantation Prince, which was really a compilation of interviews I had with my dad before he passed, about his experience during World War II, when he left the Philippines and went to Hawaii and met my mom, who is from Samoa, and her dad was in World War II as well. He was a Marine, a sergeant in a Marine, Samoan American. And so I put together the stories that I knew from my mom's side with my dad's side and created Plantation Prince. And that did okay as well too. And then I learned too that I had some errors, and I changed the tense in one of the chapters, and I was like, whatever. you just got to get it done. One of my mottos is just write from the heart, and you'll learn as you go. Um, I don't have the resources like some of the folks out there, especially the big name writers. Over time they've got the resources and people help them write and edit and whatnot. I do everything all on my own, like a lot of you too as well. And so genres, yeah, I try different things. So that was sort of like biographical. The first one was poetry, and then I did a second volume of poems, haikus for life, live, love, and laugh, something like that. I can't remember the title. But and when I published that one, I forgot to click on color. So it came in black and white, and I was so bummed because the photos that I took were just beautiful that went with the poems. Um, what did I do after that? I think I did the Divine Mercy, and the religious part of it, I didn't want to. It's something that I never want to. It's like when they tell you, never speak politics or religion with people because it just divides people. But that was one that was personal. It was sort of like not sort of, it was an apparition, that, some folks close to me thought I was nuts going through it. But you know what? I was told by the person above to just write the story. And I said, fine, I'll do it. And that's just my personal thing. But I shared it and that's that. Matter of fact, there's probably 2,000 people that follow me on Facebook for that book. Each of my books, I created a Facebook page for them, and then I market from those pages as well. And then I have my main author page. In terms of marketing, now we're talking, right? My marketing page, I actually, market. I do short videos. I do short stories on Facebook and YouTube. And recently, like in the past year, I started doing this podcast. It's evolved. It's evolved. um, and so I did that religious book, that spiritual. I call it more spiritual, because the reason why I say this that I didn't want to do talk religion is because it does divide people. I mean, the reality is that people come from different cultures, and I respect that. So I'm not one to sort of like try to make people to number one turn to religion because I have some of my best friends are atheists, and that doesn't make them bad. They're awesome human beings. Some of them even better than some of the hardcore religious people that I know. And with all the things going in the world right now, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Um, but for Christians, Christians themselves are divided because there's so many different denominations. And then also you have Buddhists, Hindu, you have Muslim folks as well too, and some of my friends who are Muslim, um, nice people. Just a lot of religion is tied to culture, and I love culture. I love learning about other people's culture and language and arts and things that they create, their music, their writing. When you translate a lot of what people write in other languages, it's just beautiful. Yeah, you have good and bad everywhere, in every culture. But I look for the beauty in things, right? So, um, that book that I wrote, The Divine Mercy and Amazing Journey, was a personal one. And I had to write that in third person. Not I had to, I was encouraged. So I'm Catholic by faith. I actually started out as, what was it? I was baptized as a kid with the United Church of Christ in Waialua, Hawaii. And it's funny because my mom is Methodist, Samoan Methodist, but my dad was Catholic. So my dad just kind of went along with my mom too. It's a Methodist denomination. It's not bad. It was, it's okay. And then my mom took us to Buddhism of all things. And so from about sixth grade till mm, my my third year in college, I was Buddhist. And I say that because when I met my wife, she had invited me to go to Catholic church with her. And I'm no stranger to that because one of my uncles, my dad's older brother, Uncle Frank, and my adopted sort of Puerto Rican grandmother who sort of cared for my dad when he first came from the Philippines to Hawaii. They were staunch Catholic. And so my uncle would take me to the Catholic Mass at St. Michael's in Waialua. And like he'd just kind of steal me away. He goes, let's go to church. And then he'd give me a piece of his wafer, the bread, and then maybe drink from the cup as well too. But that was like back in the 60s. And then my the adopted grandmother, Clara Gonzalez, used to sit me down behind her while she prayed the rosary in Latin. And back then, a lot of it was done in Latin. And so, anyway, I met this guy who tests the wafers at the different churches throughout the world, where it's, people at the churches have claimed that they've seen things moving on the wafers and they test for life. Well, the guy who tested it is from, I think he was Argentina, and he went to Catholic school, but he became an atheist after a while and became a scientist. And long story short, he now works for the Vatican and he goes around and tests these wafers. Well, I met him at a conference for the Divine Mercy about 13 years ago. And I told him about my book, and he recommended that I write it in third person because 80% or 85% of the priests would doubt my experience. And so he said it's best to write it in third person. So I finally sent a copy of the book to Pope Francis this year. Um, don't know if he'll get it, and let him know that this is my story and I'd like to rewrite it in first person. But, again, with religion, you know, it divides people, or I said people divide themselves among other people. And it's funny because people talk about peace and loving each other and this and that, but look at the world now. Some of the very folks who claim to be Christian are dividing the world. And that's why I didn't want to write the book, but I did. So that was my fourth book. And then what did I do after that? Oh, I did a book called Build Character in Children, the RLCD Formula. And I did that during COVID. It's funny how that came about because my wife and daughter were working at home, when everybody was working at home, and I was off that day. Oh no, they sent all of us home. I was selling cars. It was and they sent all of us home and said they'd call us later. This is when COVID first started a couple of years ago. And I looked at my wife, I looked at my daughter, and I said, well, shoot, I should make myself useful and write a book. So I started outlining this book about child rearing and came up with that book, Build Character in Children, the RLCD formula. And really, what RLCD stands for is the formula that I use based on my child rearing, my experience as a child, and how I wanted to raise my kids with my wife. And so the R is sort of like a math formula. It's like R squared L cubed C squared D cubed. So respect and responsibility, listen, learn, love, care, confidence, desire to achieve something worthwhile in your life, determination and discipline, or really the self-discipline to carry your objectives out in life. And so that's sort of how I've raised my kids. It's on a whiteboard in my garage. It drives my kids nuts because, you know, I used to use that all the time. Matter of fact, when my son was in, I think it was third or fourth grade, um, and I shared it with his teacher, that this is what, she asked me, how did my son know so much, and I just basically let her know that we read a lot together, and we discuss what we read. Um, and then I let her know that I have this thing called RLCD. And so she used that in class with my son one day when I think she waited on purpose when I think his buddy was sort of picking on him, that, like when you scratch the head from the back and was sitting behind my son or something like that. And so she waited where when my son responded to him, she called him out instead. It wasn't his fault, but she did that on purpose. And she just said, "Hey, RLCD." Well, he came home and he was so mad. He said, "Why did you tell Miss So and so about RLCD?" And I just said, "I tell your teachers about it." But that's basically how I raise my children. And it's worked for me. I know for every family out there, you can tweak it based on your children's needs. Um, and so I wrote that book, RLCD. And what was after that? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Okay. And then the last two books, what was, am I missing one? I might be missing one, but Heather was the other one. I was about to write a children's book. I wanted to do something fun a couple years ago, and write a children's book. And I was about to outline it, and then my older sister Heather called me and said, "Write my story." And I said, "Yeah, I don't want to do that." And she said, "No, please, I'm begging you because there's a lot of young girls out there who can relate to it." Um, Basically, it's about child abuse, and that's kind of what we went through a lot, when we were kids. And long story short, I agreed, hesitantly agreed. It was one of the toughest things I've had to write in my life. Um, and believe it or not, because I know the story firsthand, but with the help of my two best friends, Jesse and Jose, and my younger sister, Rose, um, I trust them so much, especially when it comes to writing, right? Um, they helped me finish that book. I think there were three times when I just put everything down and said, I'm not going to finish this darn book. This is just too much. But I wrote that book with not just the thought of sort of sharing this this huge challenge we have in the world about child abuse that people don't like talking about, but also because of where I come from in the islands in Hawaii, there are different cultures. And so not just using the English language, but really the challenge of using Hawaiian Pidgin English, which is a mishmash of different languages and cultures, and using sort of like phonetically the spelling of how it sounds like in the book. That's one. Number two, using Samoan language in there with some of it, and also the Ilocano, one of many Filipino languages. That's the language that my dad spoke mainly, using that in there as well. Using some of the Japanese language for some of the folks who are Japanese in there. Um, I can't remember. There are others, but I was up for the challenge. I said, if I'm going to challenge myself, I'm going to go all in and make it real instead of sugarcoating it and just Americanizing it and straight across the board, just straight English. And so I did that knowing that it could either be well received or not. And yeah, I've heard mixed messages from people where it was difficult. It is a difficult read. Really, it should be an AP English book that teachers should use out there to teach other cultures, right? And it was raw because some of the language in there, but it was real also because very emotional with all the things that Heather went through. Um, and was really proud of that book, really thankful because my buddy Jesse was the one that saved me when I was just gonna like just do it, throw it out there, and it would have been garbage. I mean, literally, when I look back at what I did with that without his help and without Jose's help and Rose, my kid sister, it would have been garbage. What I did with those three was I told them point blank, I said, I want you to be tough on this with me. I want you to be honest with me. I don't want you to sugarcoat anything. I want you to make sure that you just call me out on anything that you feel like doesn't make sense or doesn't sound right. Anything that is, you know, not written right, or if any errors and that kind of stuff. I can tell you that my kid sister didn't hold back. At first, she kind of did. I was like, no, 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 no. You're not doing it justice. Just let her rip. Um, and I like that. I like that Jose wrote a lot of military um, textbooks as well, and so he was awesome with like what he brought to the table. And then my buddy Jesse, who was is my one of my best friends and was the best man at my wedding. He's like my brother for the longest time, 40 plus years, I think. He was an English teacher in high school. And so I trust him as well. And all three of them have different styles, different approaches, but also very, very disciplined in language and especially the English language, right? And so I'm so thankful for them. And so Heather came out, and it was I don't even know how many chapters anymore, but yeah, and how many pages, but pretty good sized book. Where is that book here? Let me see here. Excuse me. Yeah, it's kind of backwards, right? I don't know. Anyway, um, hired a girl from social media in England that did the photo, the picture, not photo for me, the artwork for me. And then what else did we do? I also had it done in Spanish and in Deutsch, in German, and those haven't taken off yet. But I'm just glad that we got them in a couple different languages. And then recently, probably about a month ago, I released them on Audible as audiobooks. Now, I wanted to do the audio myself, but I've been waiting for like a good year or so, and I don't have the time or the resources to really like record it on my own. So I just went along with what Audible had for those canned voices, you know. Anyway, that's the approach I did with it. But they're released on audio as well. So it's ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook. And so Heather was kind of a big project in the sense that the challenge was language, the use of different languages in there, and also to um, um, uh, the different cultures and languages, and also the marketing of it. Um, and converting it to the other languages as well too. So, but I learned a lot from that, you know, and for my next book I'm working on, it's going to be more sci-fi, um, sci-fi meets martial arts meets magic or something. But that's, you know, again, it's in the works. Who knows? It might change down the road. And that children's book, I don't know why it's on hold right now, but you know, it's something I want to do. But that's me, you know. So some people may just feel comfortable doing, you know, writing in one genre or two or whatever. I love challenging myself and writing in different genres. And never be afraid to have a trusted friend read and give you feedback, but make sure it's not a friend that's going to sugarcoat anything because that's not going to do you any good. And be careful because there's a lot of people out there. If you use, you know, people that you don't know, just be careful because yeah, people will take advantage of you. Especially on the marketing side. You know, you guys get spammed a lot. I'm sure you get spammed a lot like I do. I just block them all. I block them all when the spammers come through, and I can read right through a BSer once I read the message. Um, and so what I'm doing now with Heather is working with some friends, and we're working on a screenplay and probably do a short movie on it first, short film, and then maybe down the road do either a full-on movie, maybe a stage play or something. We might have Heather and Plantation Prince sort of like, you know, combined, you know. But that's what I'm working on right now. Also working on music with Pocholo, uh, this friend of mine in Hong Kong who does he composes music for movies, but I sort of like his style. So we're testing it with one song first that I wrote. Oh my God, co-wrote with my sister Rose 30, 40, 45 years ago. I can't even remember anymore. But hopefully we can get that released sometime this year, and then we'll work on next parts of the music project and maybe, you know, for music for the film for Heather as well too. But yeah, you know, so I wanted to start this part of my podcast for other writers out there, right? Where, you know, we can communicate with each other either by Facebook Messenger or here on my Spotify or my YouTube message, you know, from my pages. And if you have any thoughts, any tips you want to share with others as well, bring them forward. You know, so this is really for all of you other writers, fellow writers out there. You know, I hope that you embrace it and that it helps you as well, so that you can continue to hone in on your craft and be successful. Right. Thank you for listening or watching wherever you're at in the world, because I know this is going to be spread to all the others: Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio. My podcasts get like split up into different places as well, but I thank all of you for taking the time to watch or listen, and I welcome your feedback as well. All right, thanks again for joining me on Boysan's Place. Aloha.